Okay, this is a little bit of a disclaimer. In these series, they're very generic. They're designed to answer questions that people see a lot. It's not going to be very specific, so if you're having a specific problem, be great if you see your doctor, go and see a physical therapist. These are just designed to get you thinking and to recognizing maybe some things about yourself and other people that you skate with. And if you're identifying things, maybe trying to change them and then working with the right professionals if it comes to that level. We will be discussing pain. Pain often is an indicator that something is wrong. Sometimes conditions that we'll be talking about don't cause pain, sometimes they do. Pain is a great reason to talk to a professional.
Hey, welcome to the Skate with Jake channel. As you know, I'm Jake, and I'm here today with Chris Beadle, who's a physical therapist, and he's going to tell us today about some really cool things about what's going on with the body and everything that's happening. So, this is Chris.
Awesome. This is our first one in this lecture series. We're thinking of answering questions that relate to biomechanics and how you skate. In this first one, we're answering the question, when I look out at the skate floor and I see somebody whose ankles look like they're about to break, like they're folding in half to the side, what's happening there? Is it important? Is there something we can do about it? As we discuss through, we're going to handle it in three separate sections. We're going to talk about the why. We're going to talk about what's happening to the body. Why are these specific things happening, but then from a biomechanical standpoint, what's happening underneath, and then how we can fix that. In the why section, we're talking about the kinetic chain. So why should I do anything about this? And the idea is, when we talk about the kinetic chain, the whole body is connected. So if there's a problem in my ankle, it's going to eventually affect my knee. It's going to eventually affect my hip. Lots of people who have back pain, and they don't know why they have back pain, sometimes there's something wrong with their ankle. There's a whole series of commercials out there that address just that if you fix your ankle, your back stops hurting. That's not what, the purpose of this, but there is a reason why we want to correct things that aren't happening correctly. So when we're thinking about that kinetic chain, today we're looking at the ankle, but we're also recognizing that that's going to affect how my knee works, whether or not I have pain in my knee, how my hip works, what kind of range of motion or ability I have to move and to skate. So today's the ankle, but it affects our whole body. So concerning the kinetic chain, when we're thinking about range of motion, when we're thinking about the ankle's ability to move, if it's not moving correctly, that can cause pain. It can also cause us to move in a way that isn't appropriate, which can decrease our ability to skate. It can also decrease our ability to walk or just make things painful. Concerning the ankle and what we call flat-footedness or pronation or pes planus, this is a subject that comes up a lot. If you go to your doctor and say, I think I'm flat-footed, he might say, oh yeah, you are. But he may not know what to do about it. He may say that's just normal. So when you look at the studies, it's really hard for us to tell what is flat-footed, how much. Are you officially flat-footed if it's a little or a lot? The statistics, the numbers look like something between 5 and 30% of people are flat-footed. Oftentimes people use the words flat-footed and pronated or hyperpronated interchangeably. They're not exactly the same, but they do work together. So when we're thinking about flat-footed, it's that the arch is collapsing when you stand on it. A lot of people who are flat-footed, when they're unweighted, they're sitting in a chair, their arch looks great. When they stand on it, the arch kind of disappears. And so that's what we're talking about when we're talking about flat-footed. Again, with that idea of kinetic chain, because the ankle isn't alone by itself, when the ankle starts to obliterate and you go flat-footed, that changes the way that the knee works and even the hips. So it really affects how we stand and how we skate. So when we're thinking about the foot and ankle complex and how it works, we have basically two options. It can either be rigid, causing problems with movement, or it can be flexible. So when we talk about the flexible flat foot, the issue that we have is the bones are all working correctly in that they're in the right place, but they're not being held up well. So I have my slinky as kind of an example. If you think about, there's 26 bones in the foot and 31 joints. So if you think about all of that, it's really hard to hold together. So if your muscles are not all working at the right time and in the right way, it kind of collapses. So if we're able to put pressure with all of the muscles at all the right time, then your foot is able to work the way it's supposed to. But again, if those muscles aren't holding it up, you get that collapse. To break it down a little more specifically, when we think about biomechanics, we think about motion, force, momentum, and then we think about levers, different kinds of levers, and then balance. So specifically for skating, we have a lot of momentum typically for skating correctly, and we need good alignment in order to have the motion and balance that we need in order to move forward. To optimize force production, if we have that alignment and then we can develop that force which develops momentum or keeps us in motion, we can optimize the force production resulting in movement. But if we're doing it incorrectly, again, back to our kinetic chain, we're potentially creating the opportunity for overuse or repetitive stress injuries, which is really what we want to avoid. And again, if we're doing it correctly, we're actually optimizing our force and momentum, which means we're going faster, we're more fluid, we're working with less effort and getting a maximum benefit out of it. So our skating is more fluid, it looks awesome, and you're not working as hard. And again, you're not creating those potential for repetitive stress injuries that we're trying to avoid. We're almost ready to talk about ways that we can affect posture and our ability to control our own ankle, but just as kind of a review of kinetic chain, I want to talk about some of the issues. In the last section we talked about repetitive stress injuries, and I want to talk about some of those specifics. I'm just going to put the names out there and maybe a very brief understanding of each, and you can definitely look up more. So in the foot, we frequently see bunions, which is actually where the great toe has turned and the body reacts to that, and you tend to get some bone buildup that's inappropriate. It's really uncomfortable, and that can frequently be caused, at least in part, because your ankle isn't doing what it's supposed to and holding itself up correctly. So you're creating new forces on the foot and it's trying to react to those. Plantar fasciitis, similarly, is where you're not using, again, you may be flattening your foot or you're using it inappropriately and you're stretching on the plantar fascia, which is which holds the bottom of all of the bones in your foot together and allows them to work correctly. So it can be really painful, and again, it's because of your body mechanics are not proper in your foot. Leg pain, we frequently have shin splints. Flat-footedness can definitely lead to shin splints because you're pounding right down through your foot and you're not using that foot as a lever, as a kind of a force control lever that you want it to be able to be used for. In the knee, we have total knee arthroplasty. As people get older, they have knee arthritis, and eventually, frequently, our surgeons are cutting that knee out and putting a metal knee in. A lot of that can have to do with the repetitive stress injuries. A good surgeon looks at what the ankle is doing when they do a knee replacement, because the knee replacement can't work properly if the ankle is also not working properly. So again, going back to that kinetic chain and what's happening at the foot. Another thing that is that we frequently see in people who participate in sports is ACL injuries. Again, if you're not doing the right thing at the ankle, you are more likely to have an ACL injury. It's very common for people in sports. ACL injuries have a very specific mechanism, but if your ankle is not working properly, you again are putting yourself at greater stresses and in improper positions, and the ACL is more likely as well. There are a lot of hip injuries that happen. Again, thinking about as you get older, a total hip arthroplasty is a full replacement of the hip, normally caused by pain with arthritis. But the reality is, if you're not using your joints correctly, you're putting yourself at greater risk for long-term injuries for those. So this is our final section. We're now talking about, we've talked about the ankle, how it can look really funky when people are skating. why that may be, because they're not getting that support. And now this is the section where we want to talk about, is there something I personally can do to make my ankle look more supported, my movements more fluid while I'm skating? So we're going to look at this in 4 different areas. These 4 areas are strengthening, stretching, balance, and external support. So for strengthening, we're thinking about all of those small muscles in the foot, and we'll have examples of those in a minute. For stretching, we're specifically thinking about the heel cord and the range of motion of the ankle. Most of the time when we're seeing range of motion restrictions, we're seeing the inability for you to raise your foot, which we call dorsiflexion, but where you bring your foot up into the air in relationship to the leg. And then balance is really important. Again, that's actually, we're looking at strengthening those small muscles, both in the leg and the foot itself, so that you can stand with a narrowed base of support, which a skate is very much so. And then lastly, we're looking at external support, ways that we can make the arch built up so that it is more supported, and looking at different types of skates that give us more support so that we don't have to use the muscles for that when we're starting to learn to skate and we don't have that strength yet.